There's a weight that settles into your bones, a heaviness that doesn't always carry a name. It lingers in your shoulders when you try to rest, as if peace is a prize you must earn. It whispers caution when you dare to speak your truth, warning that vulnerability might come at a cost. It tugs at you just as you begin to rise, like an invisible feather you can't see but always feel. This isn't just your pain or your story. It's the echo of generations past. It's the residue of mothers who silenced their voices to survive, fathers who buckled under unspoken burdens, and ancestors who endured by turning away from their own hearts. This is what Carl Jung called an inheritance, not merely of blood, but of the psyche, what he termed the collective unconscious. If you've ever felt like you don't quite belong in your own family, like you were born to live a different story, know this: you're not broken. You might just be the one chosen to end what they couldn't. This path doesn't begin with fixing anything. It starts with remembering, with seeing the wound clearly, perhaps for the first time. Jung taught that we're not just shaped by our childhoods. We carry the weight of forgotten grief, buried desires, and unvoiced anger from those who came before us. What psychologists now call transgenerational trauma lives in our nervous systems, in the way we flinch at love, silence ourselves to keep the peace, or strive endlessly for a worth that should have been ours from the start. To break a generational cycle isn't about pointing fingers at those who came before. It's about feeling what they couldn't bear to feel, becoming aware of the unconscious patterns that shaped their lives. Jung called this process individuation, the soul's journey to become itself, free from the scripts, shadows, and masks of family myths. But this journey often begins with a rupture, when you no longer recognize yourself in the story you've been told to live, when you look around and declare, "This ends with me," not because you're superior, but because you're awake. If this is resonating with you, don't forget to subscribe to Side Effects. We're here to explore the depths of healing together. Drop a comment below and share your story. What's one moment when you felt you were breaking a cycle? Or simply type, "I know my worth." Let's create a space for truth and connection. Awakening isn't a sudden thunderclap. It's quiet, subtle, and often uncomfortable. It's the heaviness that refuses to lift, the moment your reflection feels like a stranger, or the day your usual coping mechanisms no longer work. You may not have had the words for it, but something inside you has always known. You weren't born just to carry their pain. You were born to transform it. There are signs, sacred markers, that you're not the wound itself, but the one chosen to heal it. Let's explore these signs together, diving deep into what it means to be a cycle breaker. Sign 1. You feel everything too deeply. There's a kind of pain that doesn't originate with you, yet it feels carved into your very being. You've been called too sensitive, too emotional, too much. You cry at stories others dismiss, sense the unspoken tension in a room, or carry a grief that seems to have no source. This isn't a flaw. It's your ancestral compass, tuned to the frequency of what was buried. Jung believed the unconscious holds not just our personal wounds, but the unlived lives of those before us, their silences, sacrifices, and shame. You're the one who notices the weight in the air, who feels the unfinished stories of your lineage, who sees in the mirror not just yourself, but the echoes of those who couldn't speak. This sensitivity isn't a curse, it's a calling. You're not feeling too much, you're feeling what they couldn't. You're the vessel strong enough to hold what was hidden, brave enough to transform it into light. Healing begins not by shutting it down, but by saying, "I feel it all and I choose to stay." This depth of feeling can be overwhelming. You might walk into a family gathering and sense the undercurrents of unspoken pain. A grandmother's stoic silence, a father's restrained anger, a mother's unfulfilled dreams. You absorb it all, not because you want to, but because your soul is wired to listen. This is your gift, even when it feels like a burden. It's the ability to hear the stories that were never told, to carry the weight of what was never expressed. But here's the truth: you're not meant to drown in it. You're meant to alchemize it. By acknowledging these feelings, by naming them, you begin to release their hold. You become the one who says, "I see you and I will not turn away." Sign 2. You've always been the outsider. Have you ever felt like the black sheep? Maybe you asked too many questions, refused to follow unspoken rules, or made others uneasy just by being yourself. You were labeled rebellious, dramatic, or ungrateful, but deep down, you know it's not about defiance, it's about remembrance. Jung would say you're stepping outside the family complex, the invisible web of roles, loyalties, and silences that binds generations. Being cast as the outsider doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're breaking free. The black sheep is often the one who sees clearly, who refuses to numb the pain, who feels the weight of ancestral wounds and says, "This stops with me." It's painful to be misunderstood, to feel exiled from belonging, but this solitude is sacred. It's the space where transformation begins. You're not lost, you're in initiation. Being the outsider often means carrying the weight of disapproval. You might have been the child who questioned traditions, who challenged authority, who dared to dream beyond the family's expectations. This made you different, and that difference was often met with resistance. But this difference is your strength. It's the spark that sets you apart, the fire that drives you to create a new path. You're not just breaking rules, you're breaking cycles. You're refusing to perpetuate the patterns that kept your ancestors trapped. And while this path can feel lonely, it's also liberating. You're carving out a space where your truth can breathe, where your soul can expand. One day, those who couldn't understand your distance may see the beauty you've created from your pain. But even if they don't, know this: stepping away was the first act of love you gave yourself. You're not the black sheep, you're the cycle breaker in disguise. Sign 3. You're haunted by patterns you swore you'd escape. You promised yourself it would be different. You'd never repeat their anger, their silence, their shrinking. Yet somehow you find yourself slipping into their patterns, raising your voice like they did, staying in places that diminish you, or echoing their wounds. You wonder, how did I end up here? This isn't failure, it's shadow work in action. Jung taught that what remains unconscious controls us, masquerading as fate. The parts of our parents we reject don't vanish. They linger in our psyche, wearing new faces, repeating old stories until we're ready to see them. Breaking a cycle doesn't mean being perfect. It means being aware. It's catching yourself mid-pattern, pausing before you repeat the wound, choosing differently, even if it's just by a fraction. These moments are sacred. When you apologize instead of defend, when you cry not from shame but from recognition. You're not cursed, you're conscious. These patterns can feel like a betrayal of your own intentions. You might see yourself reacting in ways that mirror your parents' worst moments, snapping in anger, withdrawing in fear, or seeking approval at the cost of your truth. But this repetition is not a sign of weakness. It's an invitation to awareness. Each time you catch yourself, each time you pause and choose a different response, you're rewriting the script. You're not just healing yourself, you're healing the lineage. You're breaking the chain that bound those before you. This work is slow, often painful, but it's sacred. Every time you interrupt the loop, every time you soften the pain, you're doing what your ancestors couldn't. You're rewriting the story, not by erasing it, but by choosing a new ending. There comes a moment when loyalty feels like a cage. You once needed their approval like oxygen, bending yourself to fit, swallowing your truth to keep the peace. But something's shifting. You're no longer afraid of disappointing them. You're afraid of losing yourself. You're afraid of waking up one day and realizing you lived their life, not yours. This is what Jung called the sacred betrayal of individuation, becoming who you truly are, even if it means defying expectations. It's not about rejecting your family, It's about honoring your soul. Choosing freedom over approval comes with a cost: guilt, silence, distance. But what you gain is your sovereignty. You realize love without freedom isn't love, it's performance. You stop seeking permission to be yourself and start granting it. This shift can feel like a rebellion, but it's deeper than that. It's a reclaiming. You're claiming your right to exist as you are, to live a life that aligns with your truth. This might mean setting boundaries, saying no, or walking away from relationships that demand your conformity. It's not easy. The guilt can be heavy, the silence deafening. But every step toward freedom is a step toward healing, not just for you, but for the generations that follow. You're showing them that love doesn't require self-sacrifice. You're proving that authenticity is possible. You become the first to say, "I don't owe you my obedience. I own myself, my life." You may not have grown up with softness, safety, or spaces where your truth was welcomed. But now, without a blueprint, you're building it. You're the one who pauses mid-conflict to listen, who speaks kindly to your inner child when no one ever did, who creates a home, a relationship, a self where love and truth coexist. Jung would call this shadow integration, not rejecting the past, but transforming it. You're reparenting not just yourself, but your entire lineage. The mother who didn't know how to nurture, the father who couldn't stay, the silence, the shame, the survival. You're taking it all and making something new. It's slow, often lonely, but deeply sacred. You may never get the apology you deserve or the understanding you crave, but the life you're creating, the tenderness, the clarity, the courage, is your offering. This act of creation is revolutionary. You're building what your ancestors couldn't imagine, a life where love is safe, where truth is honored, where vulnerability is strength. You're the one who stops mid-argument to breathe, who chooses connection over control, who offers yourself the compassion you never received. This is your legacy, not just for you, but for those who come after. You're planting a garden where the next generation can grow without the weight of ancestral pain. You're the one who says, "This is what love looks like when it's free." If these signs resonate, if your soul has whispered yes in quiet recognition, it's time to lay something down. Awareness is only the beginning. Transformation requires action. Healing demands release, and release demands witnessing what's been carried. Find a quiet moment that belongs to you. Write a letter to the ancestor within, the one who never had the chance to rest, to speak, to become. Let your words carry what they couldn't. Then let it go. Burn the letter. Let the smoke rise and whisper, "It ends with me and love begins again." Or ask yourself, what am I still carrying that I can now release? Listen not with your mind, but with your soul. This is what it means to be a cycle breaker, to stop running, to turn inward, to make the silence sacred. You're not cursed, you're chosen, not by fate, but by your fierce willingness to feel what was buried. To feel what was buried, to name what was voiceless, to soften where your lineage hardened. You are the shatterer of patterns, the gatherer of pieces, creating not a return to the past, but a legacy of truth, a bloodline of wholeness. Being a cycle breaker is not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about showing up for yourself, for your truth, for the parts of you that were told to stay small. It's about recognizing that the pain you carry isn't just yours. It's a thread woven through generations, and you're the one with the courage to unravel it. This work is sacred, but it's not solitary. You're not alone in this journey. There are others out there, feeling the same weight, hearing the same whispers, choosing the same path. Together, we are rewriting the stories of our lineages, creating a world where love doesn't come at the cost of truth. As you move forward, remember that healing is not linear. There will be days when the weight feels heavier, when the patterns seem stronger, when the loneliness feels deeper. But these are not setbacks.
They're invitations to go deeper, to see more clearly, to choose again. Each step you take, each moment you pause to listen to your soul, is a victory. You're not just healing for yourself, you're healing for those who came before and those who will come after. You're creating a legacy of courage, of authenticity, of love. This journey is yours, but it's also ours. At Side Effects, we believe in the power of community to hold space for healing. Share your story in the comments. What's one moment when you felt the weight of your lineage, and how did you choose to break the cycle? Or simply type, "I know my worth," and let's affirm our strength together. Your voice matters. Your story matters. By sharing it, you're not just healing yourself, you're inspiring others to do the same.
To deepen this work, consider a ritual of release. Find a quiet space, a moment that's yours alone. Take a piece of paper and write to the ancestor within you, the one who carried the pain, the silence, the shame. Tell them what you've seen, what you've felt, what you're choosing to let go. Then release it. Burn the paper safely, scatter the ashes, or bury it in the earth. As you do, speak these words: I see you, I honor you, I release you. This ends with me, and love begins again. Feel the weight lift, even if just a little. This is your offering to yourself, to your lineage, to the future. As a cycle breaker, you're not just healing, you're creating. You're building a world where your children, your loved ones, and your community can thrive without the weight of ancestral pain. You're showing them what it means to live authentically, to love freely, to stand in your truth. This is your gift, not just to yourself, but to the world. You're the one who says, "It stops here." You're the one who plants the seeds for a new kind of legacy, one rooted in love, truth, and wholeness. Thank you for joining us on Side Effects. If this journey has spoken to you, subscribe and become part of our community. Share your story in the comments. Tell us about a moment you chose to break a cycle, or simply type, "I know my worth." Together, we're rewriting the stories of generations, creating a world where healing is possible, where love is free, and where truth is celebrated. Until next time, keep healing, keep blooming, keep breaking the cycles that no longer serve you.